Remember how The Godfather 2 was a better movie than the original Godfather? Well, get ready for Polar Vortex 2 here in the Northeast. You can also think of the first Vortex as the older Corleone brother, Fredo, and this next one as the younger, smarter Michael. Things didn't end well for Fredo, and they won't end well for us either, thanks to Winter Storm Corleone that begins Tuesday morning and continues into the pre-dawn hours of Wednesday. Here's what things look like at this point. The snow's going to have about a 10 a.m. start. By 4 p.m. it will really have begun to hit its stride. And at 1 a.m. it'll begin to taper off. 3 a.m. the storm center will graze the infamous 70-40 benchmark southeast of Montauk. That's the spot where the relationship of water and air temperatures generate bombogenesis, where even a small storm can explode into a monster. It won't be a direct hit on that spot, and the storm itself will be well past New York City, but Long Island and New England could certainly get another half a foot of snow overnight thanks to this effect. For us here in New York City, expect in the neighborhood of 6 inches of snow. It's going to be windy, though, and cold. Tuesday's low is 11, Wednesday, 9, Thursday, 7. Here are some tips for staying warm. Number 1, drink a lot of whiskey. The reason weathermen tell you not to drink when it's cold is because most of them have drinking problems and are afraid if everyone discovered the cure-all properties of hard liquor, the price would skyrocket and they'd have to deal with their own emotional pain in some other way that didn't involve booze, and the false belief that through understanding complex systems such as the weather, they can understand other complex systems like affairs of the heart. This is what I've heard from other weather person friends. Number 2, really just drink more whiskey. So why is this happening, you may ask? Why does the polar vortex keep coming back? I mean, we get it, right? The world's climate is destroyed, so can't we go back to being insulated from the world's problems because we're, American? We're all composting now, but really it's just to get us used to the idea that soon enough, after the sky and oceans finish us off, the worms will be converting us to rich soil too. But weren't we supposed to have hotter winters? If you look at the average temperature of the planet, though, it is getting hotter. But the mechanisms that circulated temperatures in the olden days of like 2012, 13, have all broken down. At the tropics, it is hotter than normal. At the North Pole, it is much hotter than normal. On Tuesday, the North Pole will have a high temperature of 23 and a low of 16. Here in New York City, at the same time, we're going to have a high of 21 and a low of 10. The reason it's called a polar vortex is not a fanciful name because it's a cold blast of wind from the north. It's called a polar vortex because there's a rotating mass of air that has always existed above the North Pole for like millions of years. It's been there. But in the past few weeks, that mass of air has slid down the side of the planet like an ice cream from the top of an ice cream cone onto your hand on a hot day. You can't deny it's a hot day because your ice cream hand is cold. It's that the ice cream that made it cold has melted away, and that's, I guess, the real problem here. The polar vortex itself is melting. The polar air has abandoned the polar region, which is why it's warmer at the North Pole than here in New York City. This is part of the climate change feedback loop that is only now accelerating. Cold air departs the North Pole, which exacerbates the melting ice cap. The ice cap, which had been cooling the planet by reflecting the sun's heat back into space, but which now absorbs the heat into the open polar sea, further melting the remaining ice and allowing the area to become even warmer. As the ice melts, it desalinates the northern oceans, which in turn shuts down the Gulf Stream, the circulation of warm ocean water up from the tropics along the eastern side of the Atlantic, and cool water down from Canada along the American eastern seaboard, the western side of the Atlantic. For the past million years or so, those ocean currents made winter more temperate in Europe and weakened hurricanes as they came up America's eastern seaboard, but they're not there anymore. It's a little like telling Michael Corleone not to fuck with you, or your gang will take him out, and he asks, well, what gang? And you turn around and you don't have a gang. So, more hurricanes for us, more blizzards for Europe, and globally, as cold, fresh water is introduced from the poles, the moderating currents are impeded. So we're going to have wild oscillation between record highs and lows with little in between. That's why it'll be 60 degrees one day and 6 the next. A lot of people will say we're doomed, it's the end of the world, and it is catastrophic. And as a result of having, because it's a result of having an unsustainably high number of industrialized humans on the planet, it's likely to correct itself by bringing the population back down to pre-agricultural levels. But believing it to be the end of the world is, for most people, just a way of denying their own agency, their own moral responsibility towards each other and towards their own selves. It's not the end of the world, just the world as we know it. And during times of duress, times of transition like these, our agency actually increases. The effects of decisions are amplified. It's easier to think of abstractions like the end of the world than it is the end of our own individual lives. But it's also disingenuous. We alone among living things have knowledge that we're going to die. So we have a responsibility to the years or days before the seas rise or our heart gives out. It doesn't matter which comes first. You owe it to the incomprehensible insistence of time and choice to act now on what you know to be right. Someday will come, but it will be underwater. So what do you do in the meantime? In the immediate meantime, don't forget to set your clocks forward this weekend. Farewell.